Welcome to Second Wind with Joyce Buford, a program for and about women. Joyce Buford is a certified coach and motivational speaker who has a passion for helping women who need a second wind. She is the author of the Amazon bestseller, Effortless Happiness, How to Find Your Voice and Finally Ask for What You Really Want. She studied directly with her mentor, Jack Canfield, and is a fully certified coach in his program. Also, she has served as an assistant in his training programs. Through her study with many prestigious coaches and mentors, she has created a powerful program that has positively impacted thousands of people. On today's program, Joyce and her guests will help you to get your second wind. Now here's your host, Joyce Buford.
Welcome. Thank you for being here today. I love that we've almost gotten halfway through the year. We've gone through a time that we do not remember ever experiencing before. And there's been a lot of firsts with COVID-19. It has really thrown the world into chaos at times, into fear, doubt, really scary times, that we've all experienced together. I wanted to share with you kind of where we are today in Texas for all you people all over the world listening. In Texas, we are fully open, with some limitations requested by our governor, Greg Abbott. And so anyway, we are one of approximately, according to the count on the map that I have on the internet, that we are one of 13 states that are now totally open. And so that means that we've been asked in most of those states to continue wearing masks, to hand wash or wear gloves, which I choose to wear gloves, but I also do some hand washing. Then also keep the distancing of 6 feet. It's hard to understand how all of those would be met with some conditions of these openings in some of the locations. But what I do see as I just get out and wander around my town. Now, I have chosen not to totally go back to being fully open. I am an older citizen, and so I'm taking that very cautiously. But I do wear the masks. And the thing that I do see is that about 50% of the people are wearing masks here. And so that would lead us sort of to think, well, do I want to wear a mask? Do I not want to wear a mask? I may be the only one wearing the mask. And it's to the point that I encourage everyone listening that they have to be their own guide as to whether they follow the guidelines or not. You have to take into account your life. Your life may not be like somebody's right next to you that is not wearing a mask. You must take into account your life, your conditions, the people you interact with, and how you want to be responsible going forward. I went out the other night to pick up food, which I do a lot of cooking myself. And so I've only been visiting the grocery store. And I noticed in that I was surprised, one, that they had opened their restaurant, since I really wasn't on top of that. But I was surprised at the number of people that didn't come in with masks on. And so I think there's going to be a lot of a real need for us to be our own monitors as the country heals. So that's my only comment about this new transition of opening our world, is that we must take on responsibility for ourselves, not be swayed by the person that's standing next to us. So anyway, that is my share about the COVID-19 in Texas. Now, we have a fabulous guest this morning. I'm so excited that she is with us because she holds so much knowledge. Her name is Beth Battolino, and she is an RN CEO of Women's Health Expert. She is a women's health expert, and she is the CEO of womenshealth.com. It's not .com or .org.
HealthyWomen.org. HealthyWomen.org.
Sorry, I reversed those names there. HealthyWomen.org. Now, Beth has worked in the healthcare industry for more than 25 years, helping to define and drive public education programs on a broad range of women's health issues. She launched and has expanded the HealthyWomen.org brand and is responsible for the business development and strategy positioning of the organization. Healthy Women now connects to millions of women across the country and the world through its wide program distribution and innovative use of technology. She is a practicing nurse. She has been on the front line in COVID-19, and she is in the maternal child care at Riverview Medical Center, Hackensack Meridian Health in Red Bank, New Jersey. Whoa, that was a mouthful. In addition to her nursing degree, Beth holds degrees in political science, business, and public administration from Marymount University. Now, on the other side of Beth, as we all know, we have another side. She loves to run and compete in road races. She enjoys skiing and sailing with her husband and son, 7-year-old son. She loves welcoming new babies into the world. Welcome, Beth. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you, Joyce. I'm delighted.
I got from that you are very active. You are an active woman, and you do keep that your health in good check because of that.
You know what? I do, because it helps. The whole thing with running is that before COVID, I traveled a lot. And so it's one thing that I could always get in. And, you know, a pair of sneakers does not weigh a lot in the suitcase. So there's no excuse not to pack them. And it's just a big stress reliever for me. And the group of women that I run with when I'm home, we say runners make us better moms because it's a big stress relief for us. And so after we're done with our run, we just feel so much better.
Yes, yeah. It's good to have. I think it's great that you have the running group to experience because that's really good bonding with other women, I think, and that's important as well. So
yes, we say it's our therapy group.
I get that.
Yep.
I get that. Now, this Healthy Women's Organization, tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, it's so wonderful that we have this type of support and fairly new to me to learn about it. So tell us more about the mission and who it serves. And
Absolutely. So HealthyWomen.org, as you stated during the opening of the show, we've been in existence since 1988. So we've been around for quite a long time, and we were the first organization to address all women's health and wellness issues. And the most important thing, I think, for your audience to understand about Healthy Women and HealthyWomen.org is that we provide medically vetted information. So it's information that your audience can trust. It's reviewed by a medical advisory board, and we provide great resources for women to go to. So if they're diagnosed or are diagnosed with a condition or they just want to find out more information, whether it's about their annual women's wellness visit or about, osteoporosis and how they can prevent it, they can log on to our site, HealthyWomen.org, and find great information, tools, and resources that will educate them and help them with that conversation with their healthcare provider. And we were established as part of Columbia Hospital for Women back in 1988, and it was the vision of a female obstetrician and gynecologist, Dr. Violet Bowen-Hugh, who came from a very poor family, and she was the first one to go to finish high school, let alone college. And her mission was to create an organization so that all women had access to quality health information and that they could understand and really demand to know what treatments are available and more importantly, what treatment options would be best for them, based on their family history and based on where they are. So it was really her vision. And at that time, we were a toll-free number, and we printed a newsletter. So, fast forward, the internet comes up, and so we were the first organization to take all this great information that we had and create the first online source for all women's health. We beat the Office of Women's Health. We beat WebMD. We were the first go-to site for women's health and wellness information, and we continued growing it. So right out of college, in 1991, I basically started with Healthy Women, and I've continued my career with Healthy Women. The hospital has closed since the organization started, but we were able to pull away the business and keep it going. So in 1997, Healthy Women, we were no longer affiliated with the hospital, and we opened the organization. There were three of us, and we were working from home. So go figure, now COVID-19, everyone's working from home. We started the organization from our homes, and now we've continued to be the leading site for women's health and wellness information. So it's been a great career.
You are a trendsetter. You were doing at home,
way
remote.
Before, right? Yes.
I'm amazed. This was a breeze for you, wasn't it?
That's a really important point. It has been. So for so many other companies and businesses, they really had to push the pause button for a second and kind of figure out, how do I work? How do I do this? How do we transfer from offices to our home environment? And for all of us at Healthy Women, it's like business is normal. So we were able to continue doing our day-to-day while thinking up new ideas and new opportunities for some of the people, some of the partners that we're working with. So it hasn't been a huge transition. It's certainly been a bump now that most of us have kids in their homes. So trying to juggle, the kids and the work from home has been, and the husbands too. Let's add them in there. It's been interesting, but yeah, it hasn't really affected our day to day because we've been used to it. And you're right, like we were trendsetters.
I love that. Well, for the listening audience, I want to just tell the different areas that you do address. You have highlighted or sections on your web page that address pregnancy and parenting, sex and relationship,
right,
healthy living, healthy aging,
right,
disease and conditions.
Right.
Then you have policy and events. So all of those are wonderful. They're topics that they're just absolutely, how'd you come up with all those topics? I mean, I can get the parenting, the sex, but you really broke it down into addressing healthy aging.
Right.
And why did you feel that was so important?
Well, it's important because our audience, our demographics are women 35 to 64, and we've seen such a huge change in how healthcare, when I first started with Healthy Women in the early 90s, how healthcare and women were presented to how it's presented now. There's been a huge change because in the late 80s and early 90s, it was very disease focused. So everything was focused on disease, whether it was breast cancer, ovarian cancer, heart disease, osteoporosis, very disease specific, and not really information on how to live with, right? So if you have a condition today and how it was being treated, right? So things have changed, thank goodness, right? Women are now in clinical trials. We're seeing information and resources that are available to give women additional options in living with certain conditions. So it was very important for Healthy Women to evolve as medications, as clinical trials, and how we're managing our day-to-day life. It was very important to pull in that living well and healthy aging piece of it. And so what we've done is, as you mentioned, we still have the disease state and that deep dive information, But more importantly, now we can pull in how to live well, because women are living, we know women live longer than men. There are new treatment options that give women that were diagnosed with a chronic condition 15 years ago, new opportunities to live well with that chronic condition. And now we can have those women sharing their stories, whether they're, and some of the hurdles, but how they're living well with their conditions. And the importance of diet and nutrition and preventative screenings, which are covered under the Affordable Care Act, which is why we pulled in policy, because we decided that there's no better time now than to make sure that women who want to understand how policy affects their health should have that. And so while they're at healthywomen.org, they can learn about the importance of their annual women's wellness visit, the importance of getting those preventative screenings, because we know preventative screenings save lives. And more importantly, they can understand how policy, if they choose to, affects some of those screenings and or the therapies that they need, whether it's prescription, physical therapy, massage therapy, whatever it is, how the policy piece of it, whether it's covering their insurance or access to medication, affects them. And if they choose to decide to write to their, they want to take action, then we provide that information too. So it's really a one-stop shop for women's health and wellness information. And the wellness, we can't stress that enough, because now it's not just disease. Women want to age well, and we're giving them the information and resources to do just that.
Yeah. I want to sort of throw this out at you. I experienced breast cancer several years ago, and at that time, I made several decisions about my body, how I wanted to go through the disease. I was very fortunate. It was not advanced. It was so baby. It was so early. It was still in sac. It was tiny. You could hardly say it was cancer. It just kind of skimmed under there. So I was very fortunate, but there were so many decisions that came up that I had to address as to how I wanted my body to be treated. And is there anything in your programs that address some of those issues?
There is. And what we do is make sure that, we provide the information on all options, but more importantly, the questions that you need to ask, because that's where we find that, sometimes is the biggest, could be the hardest thing to do is when you're in that, when you're meeting with your physician or your team of healthcare providers, understanding what questions you should be asking. For many of us, the importance of bringing a friend or a family member to that visit so they can write down and help you have that conversation, because it's, first of all, hearing the word, in your case, cancer, you're just like, oh my goodness, right? Like that just knocks the wind out of you. But being able to make sure that during those visits, you're asking questions that can help you understand the path that you need to go down, and asking the right questions to make sure that you understand all the options, not just the options your healthcare provider might be telling you, but like, are you a candidate, for instance, for a clinical trial? Is your healthcare provider offering clinical trial, or do they have a connection of, another physician or hospital system that is doing a clinical trial, and can they help you? It's just those type of questions that are so important, and making sure that women have the information and the resources to make sure that they're making the educated decision about their health. So we, we provide, and it may be providing, for us, it's not always the patient. It may be her sister, her aunt, or her mom that's on our site, but it's her daughter or her niece that's that's been diagnosed. So they're finding and collecting the information so that they can help that other person navigate the healthcare system, because we all need, someone to hold our hands when we hear the word cancer or any type of disease. It's just helpful, and making sure again that you have the right resources in place to help make an educated decision about your health is so important. And it sounds like you did, which is great.
Yeah. Well, it's so many women are faced with cancer. It's huge.
Right. That's right.
And so it really is, there's much more than just attacking the disease. There are many decisions. And sometimes we have a support family. And sometimes the family, unless they are our age, would have trouble answering some of these questions. You know what I mean? I certainly think it's our decision, so.
Right.
Anyway, it was very interesting. All's good that I did my due, and I am here today.
And you were lucky, right? Like you said, they caught it very early.
So
I'm thinking that you had your mammogram and they were able to see it. And it's just really important for women to understand that, their mammograms are important and that these are covered right now under the Affordable Care Act. So whether, you're underinsured or you have insurance, or you don't, you have this. This is covered, and that there should be no excuses for not getting your preventative screenings done.
Right. Oh, yes, very important. Very important.
Very important.
Oh, yes. Now, we were going to spend a little time today on how COVID-19 has really changed the lives of women. And what that means is stress. There's more stress.
More stress.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, for sure.
So how has the family been affected? In your situation, of course, it's all different. I live alone, so I had to deal with loneliness. You live with family members, so you had to deal with it in a different way. So explain that to how you and the woman with the family living with other people would be stressed over this. Unusual.
Well, I think, it's so funny to listen to, the stories when we do see each other or just the, texts and emails that we're getting. So now it's, this whole, now the new buzzword is this new norm, right? So you hear the new norm and it's, so you're trying to work. And so for me, it's, over 40 hours a week that I put in as any CEO of a company, does, right? But it's now not only managing working, but it's also managing homeschooling. And for many of us, that's been a huge hurdle for us. Because, and the teachers, so many of these teachers, their background is not in technology, right? So they're trying to figure out how to implement, these online classes and keep the kids, on par and somewhat some type of schedule and routine that they were used to in school. And, my heart goes out to some of the parents that have special needs children because those classes, trying to deal with those type of classes and what they were getting in school versus home is completely different. So everyone has their own stress. But for me personally, it's been trying to set up calls, manage the homeschooling because it's not just putting them in front of the computer. A lot of times you have to be there with them, going through the plans and listening in and making sure that they're getting all the work done and done correctly. And then, most of the homeschooling does not take you through 3:00 in the afternoon. They're usually done right after lunch. So then how do you keep them active, while you're still working, so that's been hard. And then, for many of us, we're laughing, but also not laughing like funny. It's just stressful laugh where, many of our husbands are like, okay, I've got to work. And they're going into the home office, closing the door. And, they're in there from 8:30 in the morning till, 5:30 at night when it's time for dinner. We're like, that's not happening either. Like, you can't just go in and do your job and expect me to do my job and, take care of the kids and the whole homeschooling. So it's making new boundaries, right? People are having the conversation and trying to figure out how can we work together as a team to make this work for our family. And so I wish I could say I have the perfect formula. I certainly do not. And I'm taking it day by day. And as is my team, because most of my team members are moms and we have young ones. And it's just, doing our best to make sure we have support in place for each other too. So, even as you think about working from home, working with your colleagues to make sure that you're each supporting each other because it's an important time to make sure that you have that. And then knowing enough to turn off the computer. And for me, I do need to shut down earlier. I'll log back on later at night, but I feel like I need to be off the computer by 3 o'clock, 3:30 at the latest, and spend some time, whether it's, throwing some baskets in the backyard, or going for a bike ride, or, just something with my son to give him some attention, because it just, you could just tell that by that time they just need someone, an adult to help them with a game or whatever it is. And so that's been important. And it's, everyone's different, but I find that's working out much better for me than trying to extend my workday until like 6 o'clock and then, do the playtime. I need to shut down earlier and spend some quality time, and then I can go back later on and finish up if I need to.
Well, I think homeschooling has been they've learned a lot. As you say, the teachers were not as skilled in that practice of teaching. And certainly they were learning. Then there's also the fact that I think the attention span is different when you're learning over the internet. And so there was another thing they have to deal with. So I'm really anxious to see. And then there is that child that doesn't have that support that you could give your child. And I'm really anxious to see the schooling to go back into the classroom.
It's going to be difficult. And you brought up a lot of really good points. And it's been interesting because I've been doing a lot of listening too. And I've got, I have two sisters. One is a principal and one is a teacher. So I'm listening to some of the, the struggles that they're going through. As you said, not all families have access to Wi-Fi, to the internet. So what happens to those children? And it's not like they can go to the library and hop on a computer there. And just getting the proper equipment to some of these students was interesting, to hear. And how are you going to grade them? And what's going to happen next year? Is it going to be everyone going back to school, or the school's going to be closed in September? So there's still a lot of questions, and we don't have the answers. But here's what I can tell you. I feel like women are we're resilient. We're very powerful. We're not afraid to ask questions, and I am so proud to hear and see how many success stories. I'm very optimistic, so I love to see and hear the positiveness that has come through this pandemic. And I
Beth,
feel
I'm going to stop. Beth, I'm going to stop here so we can go to commercial. It was hard to find a place because it was all such good stuff. But when we come back, there are other areas we're going to be talking about that have been affected by COVID-19. So stay with us.
Motivational speaker and author Joyce Buford returns after this short break. Close your eyes and imagine living your life without limits. Where would you go? Who would you meet? What would you do? During an Uncover Your Hidden Genius session, you will discover what's keeping you from living your life with purpose, passion, and fulfillment of your potential. You'll get a clear vision of the steps you need to take to uncover your hidden genius so that you can live a life without limits. Sessions can be done over the phone, Skype, or in person. Find out more at www.joycebufordempowers.com or by calling 903-287-0747. Welcome back to this segment of Second Wind. Joyce Buford, the author of Effortless Happiness, continues in this segment to share insights that will help you live a life of greater purpose and filled with happiness. Now here's our host, author and coach, Joyce Buford.
Welcome back. We are talking with Beth Bettolino. Oh dear, Bethy. The CEO of Healthy Women, and she is sharing with us how COVID-19 has affected women and family interacting with their responsibilities in the family. So now what we'd like to address, we could go on talking about that. There's so much schooling, everything that has affected home life. But now there's another important area that we need to discuss, and that is how it's affected our relationships a very important part of our lives. So Beth, tell us about how that quarantine has taken a toll on relationships.
Well, I think, I think everyone can share their stories. And I look at, for my mom who lives, by herself, and I'm so grateful that my two sisters are right near her, because that's been hard for, people that are, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. This whole social isolation has been very tough. And especially in the beginning, when we were so nervous about even, bringing the groceries in and wiping everything down. And it's been just put on, and especially for people that are active like yourself, Joyce, you're so independent and used to doing things. Having this kind of shutdown was very, very scary. So it's that, social isolation that's been unnerving. And then for people with families, it's coming up with kind of a new routine, and how do we keep the kids active and involved, and ourselves too. So it's been very interesting. And as a nurse, so I'm a practicing nurse, and that did not slow down. Actually, that picked up. Normally I do 2 shifts a month. And so I was putting in, 4 to 6 shifts, covering, to make sure that our floor was covered. Honestly, I was looking forward to that because, number one, you make a difference, but number two, it's just seeing people, and talking to them and making sure that you feel like you're not crazy, like this whole thing that you're not going crazy. And we were joking in the nursery the other day that normally when we see snowstorms, over a weekend or whatever, we always laugh and say, okay, we're going to see an increase in babies 9 months later. And this one, we were just like, we're not going to see an increase of babies. It's going to be an increase of divorces, because this is just way too much family time for everyone. So I think it is, and I just think, people have done a great job, and I want to applaud all those people that have protected, the healthcare workers by staying home and using the appropriate protocol with their masks and their gloves, and really taking this serious. So thank you to all of you that do that. And then I think, as we re-enter, or that whole welcome back, we're going to do it smart and safe. And we'll just see. We'll take it step by step and listen to, the governors and the healthcare professionals that are providing that guidance to us, and how we're going to go back. And I don't think we're going to go back to normal, right off, but I think eventually we will get there.
Yes. Yeah. Even our normal will be a little different, but it'll be more of a everyday routine, which was certainly missing during this. I was watching yesterday, about the rise in divorces, and this was from a New York City lawyer attorney, and she had been interviewed by one of the news medias, and she was talking about how her caseload was really heavy. But, as life gets back to normal, we might really kind of like those people once they get out of the house, right? So we could go back to the normal.
Go back to the normal, yeah.
Yeah. But I do want to ask you about, because there's such a rare time that we get to talk to somebody that was really on the front lines, as you were. How do you face that fear that I would have just in being thrust into the disease itself, the virus?
Yeah, I think about it every day, because I don't think, and it's no one understands, if you listen, and we're all listening to the news, everything changes on a dime, right? So that's how it has been in the hospitals too. It's like you go in, they're constantly shifting and changing protocols based on, the news that we're getting, and it's very quick. Like, so for instance, I can give you an example, when we first started going in, you just went into the hospital. There was no questions. Your temperature wasn't taken. So we had, no one knew if we were carriers because there was no test, right, to provide. And then we were taking care of patients that we had no idea if they had it or they were, or were susceptible. And so it was, really charting a whole new course of how we're managing this. And then as information started to, there was one day I was at the hospital and they were saying that masks were not important, not necessary. It set up more stress for other people seeing you in masks. So they said, you do not need to wear a mask. And then the next day I worked and they're like, masks are mandatory, right? So I'm like, okay, but yesterday I didn't wear a mask all day. Now you're telling me that it's mandatory and I'm going home to my family, right, after my shift is over. So what is the risk? What is my risk and what's the risk of my family? Am I giving to my family, right? So that was very unnerving. And then, then they changed the type of masks. And so before they were saying the N95 mask wasn't important, not all of us had to wear it. And then they switched that. And I had been with a COVID patient. I found out that one of my patients, her husband, had received a call while they were in the hospital that his test came back and he was COVID positive. And so I'd been around this family, most of the day. And then at the end of the shift, I was told that the N95 mask was a requirement now, that it was mandatory. And they asked me if I wanted to start wearing the mask. And I said, I have 10 minutes left in my shift. What difference is it going to make? Like, I'm already exposed. But I just remember driving home that night thinking, no one asked me if I needed to get tested. They just they don't have the right protocol set up for healthcare providers. So it is unnerving. And I have to say, it does not escape my mind. I think about it, but knock on wood, I'm healthy. I haven't, exhibited, zero symptoms. And I've always followed strict protocol when it came to coming from the hospital. I would always take my scrubs off. I kind of go in my laundry room, my mudroom entrance, and throw everything right into the washing machine and then take a shower. So I'm one of those people that I've always done that. So I'm hoping that has protected my family, and knock on wood, we're all fine. There hasn't been any problems, but it does scare me. Like it's always in the back of my head. And I'm thinking do I need to get tested? And I probably do.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for being so open with that answer. We would certainly think that because I kind of think the nursing and the support occupations are so sensitive and so in tune with their feelings, hopefully, that thank you. I really appreciate that answer.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Now there's another area I'd like to look at before we finish our conversation today and that is the gender differences. I love that we are women and we are built with some real survival tactics inside of us. So would you address that? There really is a difference here, isn't there? The way that we both receive COVID-19.
Yeah. Even though women seem to be bearing more than anyone thought throughout the crisis, it seems women might have an easier time of it than men. And what we've looked at is coronavirus is killing more men than women. We know that. And the CDC study concluded that males may be disproportionately affected by COVID-19 compared to females. In fact, the study found that 54% of those hospitalized were male compared to only 46% female. Women, in fact, have a better immune system and may be managing the infection better because they have the innate ability to do so, which is very interesting. And it's important because women historically have been left out of clinical trials, which has led to poor health outcomes. But with the upcoming vaccine trial research, we should see if women report greater adverse events or side effects like fever, inflammation, pain at the injection site more so than men. So we're going to be paying attention to that based on what we've learned from our history. And it was interesting because one of the first persons to raise their hand to say that I will be in a clinical trial after having COVID-19 was a female. So it was it'll be very interesting to see how this all kind of rolls out, the clinical trials and how the research will be if there's any greater adverse events or side effects on women more than men. But right now, we know that the coronavirus is killing more men than women.
Yes. We have a story, just short story I want to share. Very early in the COVID-19 spread, there was several couples. They went to Mexico for their son's wedding. While down there, they were exposed. They came home and both had the virus. They both went into the hospital, but she remained in Tyler, which we are a medical area here, but she could be serviced here and medicated here, intended to. Her husband had heart issues, so he went to Dallas for more. I don't know why they transferred him to Dallas, but it was more serious. He needed a breathing machine, which they needed.
Ventilator?
They had up there.
He needed the ventilator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was not doing well. He was struggling. I do not know the end of that story other than, two people exposed. Certainly the physical health made a difference, and I know so little about the case, but it just kind of made me support your figures there when you were talking about male versus female.
Right.
Surviving and I don't know that he didn't survive, but anyway. But it is kind of interesting that we think we're the weaker, but in some ways we are the stronger sex in that we're able to do some of these things. Just weird. I'm amazed at the resilience of women and their can-do approach to life. I just love it. I love seeing women achieve.
Me too. It's supporting each other and making sure I think we've always been resilient, and the fact that I think it's important for us to support each other. I think especially right now with all the the additional stressors, I think everyone's living under some sort of stress, but I think this has been even more stressful. And so making sure that we're supporting each other during this and making sure people realize that they're not the only ones, dealing with stress, whether, or problems with their children in homeschool, whatever it is, making sure that people share their stories so others understand that they're not alone, is going to be really important too, because it helps us all get through it. It makes us not feel as isolated or feel like a failure too. So I think that's really important. And so that's why, Healthy Women is here. We're here to remind you that you're not alone and that there are other women going through this and they're sharing their stories. We've put together a great resource. We have a great COVID-19 webpage to help you out and to navigate, where to find more information on it, and understanding that your mental health is just as important as your physical health during this time too. So you're not alone. There's great resources. And we're here for you during COVID, and after COVID, we will be here holding your hand and making sure that you have access and resources to trusted, medically vetted information.
I agree that your website is just really a great find. I want everybody to go there. It's healthywomen.org, and just go through those different sites. There's a lot of information. It's very important to be connected and have a resource like this. So I thank you for your work there. But there's one other area I want to sort of talk a little bit about, and that is the parenting. Particularly our high school seniors were particularly affected by the way that their lives, they had this great expectation about an important part of their life, and yet it didn't come off the way they had always dreamed. I mean, it happens to us in a lot of ways, but I found sometimes parents were increasing the poor me, the frustration of that graduation ceremonies couldn't be as they had meant, had dreamed of having. And so how how does that have effect on our young people? And do we need to be cautious about explaining that so that they can understand it's not something just done to them? It just happened.
It did just happen, and it's taken out an important chapter of their life. But I think these kids are going to become, these kids are going to be amazing, and I'm looking forward to seeing, how they write their next chapter after going through this type of pandemic at this juncture of their life, right? So,
right.
One thing that we've done at Healthy Women is we put together a really good page on and interviewed an expert, Catherine Perlman, on how to parent teens through the pandemic. So you can find that information at our site. But, they've lost of friends, their activities, as you said, social experiences have taken an emotional toll on teens. So parents will definitely need to be a little bit more flexible in their standards. And with homeschooling and online learning, it is okay for both parents and teens to ask their schools for help. And the schools, I have to say, they're constantly stressing that with every, with their weekly emails, the notes that we're getting, daily notes from our teacher is always saying, I'm here. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me, which is just, whether you need to or not, it's just so nice to see that and knowing that you can. And for some parents, they may want to take them up. Schools, a lot of the schools have counselors in place to help or hold your hand during this time, which I think is so important. And that, as we mentioned and as you mentioned, Texas, every state is going to start to reopen, but it's going to be up to all of us to figure out how we're going to keep our families safe, right? So making sure that we understand what the protocols are and that we're following those protocols. And what's very disturbing is to see some of the snippets on the news over the weekend of these people thinking that they can just go back to what, the norm is very disturbing. So it's just making sure that we're smart, and that we protect our families. And as doors and things begin to reopen, or that whole welcome back, it's going to be different. And, for us to make sure that we, stay safe and protect our families and do it in a smart way is going to be really important. So I think there are great tools and resources out there on how to help, your kids adjust to this. And, it's not minimizing their feelings. It's understanding and listening to them, because they are missing that chapter, a big chapter for many of us, graduation, celebrations, getting into college, and even, who knows if colleges are going to open in September or August. That's going to be, wait to be seen, right? To see how that's going to pan out for a lot of these kids. And I think what's been interesting is, seeing what's been created, to help celebrate. So we've been doing a lot of virtual birthday or like drive-bys. So decorating the cars and lining up, and I'm sure you've seen it in your area with the horns. And one little boy there was a fire truck in his parade, and my little son came in the door and said, "Mom, Blake's party was epic." Like, he was so excited. And it's just so funny to see how excited they get. But I think it's so important, like these little things, just to see their friends, even if it's waving through the opening of the sunroof in the car and blowing your whistle and stuff. It just makes their day a little bit different, and they get to see their friends and smile and still celebrate, but it's celebrating in a new way, and it's okay for right now. And that's what I think I want. I think if, as we wrap up our show, it's just like, it's okay. We will get through this, and knowing that you have friends and family that are there to support you and that you're not alone is important. And for those parents of teens, you're not alone either, and there's going to be special celebrations when this is over. But right now, the virtual Zoom calls are important, the drive-bys and setting up, things on your lawn that say congratulations and celebrating in a different way is okay. And that's going to get you through this time. And I tell all my new moms, like, this is still such a special chapter and a special occasion, and you will celebrate with your friends and family in a few months. But right now, you still can celebrate this little birth of this baby, and you're just going to do it in a different way. And it's going to be just as important now as it will be in a few months.
Yes, yes. I was taken back by, I think it was a governor, or maybe, I think it was a governor that made light of the graduation exercise, graduation ceremony. And he was saying, you've saved all those memories, those bad memories that you have to live with all your life. I don't know if you saw that or not, but it wasn't very sensitive. And we do need to take on and be empathetic, I think, with those young people, because that's a key point they think in life that's happened to them so far. Graduating high school is a big deal. And although we are on the other side and we know there are lots of big deals, it's still very important for us to be empathetic to them, to understand and be kind, because they need to know, yes, that did happen. But as you said, there are lots to look forward to. And there are only going to be a few that are going to be able to talk about not having a graduation ceremony in 2020. So they'll be unique, won't they?
They are going to be unique, and I'm excited. I think this group of children, this group of kids, they're going to be game changers, and the fact that they are able to deal with this in a new and different way is going to make them, I think, even stronger as they pave their way into the future. So it's going to be exciting to see what this class of 2020 does in the future.
Agreed. Now, how can we stay connected to Healthy Women? What do you have ongoing for my listeners to go to?
Yes. No, June 3rd, we're going to be having our first webinar, and we're going to be hosting a series of webinars. So we'll make sure we get that information, but you can find it on healthywomen.org. And we're going to be talking about, we're going to have conversations on what women want to know. So from COVID-19 to living well, you name it, we're going to be talking about it on Healthy Women. So it's just going to be a new offering, and it's going to be women talk. It's just talking to real women that are living with, whether it's breast cancer or living through the pandemic. And that's going to be our first conversation is COVID-19. And we're going to be evolving those conversations based on what our audience is telling us they'd like to hear about. So it's really taking our online polls and our surveys and bringing that into more of a conversation versus just some articles or blogs. So we're going to be hosting that. Our first one is going to be on looking at COVID-19 and its impact on women, and that will be hosted on Wednesday, June 3rd.
Now, is that going to, I'm sorry, you may have said this, is that going to be a monthly activity?
We're going to look at a monthly webinar to start, and it might be more frequent, but our first one will be on June 3rd, and then we're going to have our annual event, which is we have an in-person event in Washington, and we normally host that in May. This year we're going to have a virtual event because May was not such a good month to have an in-person event, right? So we hit the pause button, and we're going to have a virtual event in September. And I want to say stay tuned because there's going to be some important announcements from that event, and we will make sure that your audience has the invitation to attend, and it will be online.
Wonderful. Well, there's so many things. I really do encourage you listeners out there to go to healthywomen.org and just go over the website. There's ways to connect. There's newsletters there. There's other printed materials. But of course, the June 3rd will be fun because it's live. I would assume you're recording that for those people that missed the 3rd. Everything's recorded, right? I think it is.
Everything's recorded these days to make sure it fits into your day, right? Not just our day. Right.
But I am so excited that we have had this golden opportunity to have you on Second Wind. Beth. It's just been really, I've gotten so excited about what you offer for the woman, because that's who I'm serving, is the woman.
That's right.
I want the women of all ages, really. And so I appreciate your work. I really appreciate your foresight that you saw this was so important that so early in your life you established this and fought for it to be a real thing. So thank you for being with us today. It has just been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Joyce. I loved it, and I look forward to more conversations with you. And thank you for hosting such a great show.
Oh, thank you. And yes, Beth and I have been talking about other shows with other people also on the staff so that we can talk about all different subjects to just bring this to you. So listen to us. We'll be telling you about those. So anyway, go to healthywomen.org. So thank you, Beth.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. So as we go on and we're coming to the close of our show today, I do hope that you have learned some good things about things that we need to be aware of. One thing we need to know is that we need to stay healthy to build up our immune system so that we can support our families and bring those qualities that we want to give to our families, being empathetic to the high school senior and all of that. So anyway, this is a great way for us to stay connected through Second Wind. I continue to offer great information to you. It's very important to me. But you can connect with me by going to JoyceBufordEmpowers.com or Second Wind with Joyce and leave a message. I really want to support you. Thank you for being here today. Go out this week, make a difference, and be loving to yourself. Thank you for being here.
At the same time for another edition of Second Wind. Through the Joyce Buford Empowerment System, women are receiving the support they need through their transitions and are able to reclaim their true purpose with confidence. They receive the tools they need to map out new lives. You can find out more about her coaching services at JoyceBufordEmpowers.com.